The year is 2025 in the once Great Britain, and things are very scary and are declining fast. The nation is under invasion every single day. The invasion being directly facilitated by the government and being facilitated by successive governments for generations, as the native population has been exploited more and more on their path to serfdom. Many towns and cities in all of our nations have been ethnically cleansed in a way that we've never ever seen in any of our nation's histories. As the colonization continues, we've become increasingly divided, unsure who our real enemy is, and increasingly are at each other's throats, when we really should be uniting against the common enemy. Had we seen the signs and learned from the past, maybe we wouldn't have been in this position. However, seeing the state of affairs and seeing what is to come if this trend continues, many have now taken it upon themselves to join up and serve in the British Uprising. And that is where today's story begins. My guest today, ladies and gentlemen, spent many years in the Royal Marines, however was unceremoniously kicked out after highlighting a plague that was encroaching more and more on our armed forces every single day. The plague of DEI.
You've served in the armed forces in the past, if I'm not mistaken, and now you say you're serving in the British Uprising. Mind giving a little bit of information as to what you mean by that?
Been booted out of the armed forces for, officially been booted out of the armed forces for speaking to the press as a result of the DEI whistleblowing thing that I was involved in.
Since losing his career for daring to speak the truth and stand in the way of the cult of DEI, John has now transitioned into serving in the British Uprising, highlighting many of the prominent political issues of the day, not least of which in importance is the everyday invasion of our home.
We're going to be invaded, but I would argue the invasion is happening as a side point. The negative effects that are as a result of demographic change and the southern border invasion are much worse than what we have taken in multiple other wars. Do you know what I mean?
Having spent much of his early life in some of the poorest areas of Africa, John saw firsthand the plight of genuine refugees in these areas who are fleeing war and fleeing persecution. As such, he effortlessly highlights how these people coming across on the boats coming through the border every single day are not, for the most part, in fact, genuine refugees, but are opportunists here to take over.
Yeah, okay, so we lived in Burundi. It's right on the border with the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And that whole region, and I mean, Africa's almost always in some state of war. The average salary in Burundi is $200 a year. They're practically like African, Arab, like Nepo babies, basically. I don't know how they got their money, but, likely not through legitimate means.
With Britain being an absolute third world colonized laughingstock in the eyes of the rest of the world, and its native population on track to being a minority in the next generation, we really need to wake up and we really need to start taking action. Because the government, ladies and gentlemen, has no intention of letting up. We have nobody to look out for us but ourselves.
And I was talking about, what is the first truly Islamist country that will get a nuclear weapon? And we were like, maybe it's Iran, maybe Pakistan already kind of counts. And then we sort of finally decided maybe it's actually the UK, since Labour just took over.
Nobody else is going to look out for us. And why would we expect anybody else to look out for us? Why would we expect anybody else to keep our affairs in order?
If it can happen in London, if it can happen in Birmingham, in our biggest cities, it can happen in our smallest little towns and hamlets. And something needs to be done.
In Wales, or at least many areas of it, with it still being very, very ethnically homogenous, it's very difficult sometimes to appreciate the struggles that others are going through, the struggles that our brothers and sisters in England, Scotland, Ireland, and even in our cities are going through. I don't think enough people realize what minoritization truly means, ladies and gentlemen, the ramifications of it.
The minute we become a minority and we have no say anymore, that's basically the equivalent of having no rights whatsoever, because we've surrendered our ability to change those things in any democratic fashion.
Make no mistake, if that were to happen, there would be no minority rights campaigns for us. There would be no affirmative action for us. There would be no diversity, equity, and inclusion for us, ladies and gentlemen. We would very soon be removed from the gene pool. My guest, however, does understand that very well. This is Voice of the Valleys with Mr. John Carr. Enjoy.